Ray's small cabin was never meant for guests. It stood on the edge of the human frontier, far from the glittering cities. Close to the old border where the Veyran patrol ships still passed overhead from time to time, it was a quiet life, predictable. And he liked it that way, but the alien woman in his spare room shattered that peace. When he had carried her in from the rain the night before, she was shivering, her silver eyes half closed, her strange patterned skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She had slept for hours, and Ray had stayed awake. Sitting in the old chair, watching her breathing, wondering what kind of trouble had just landed at his doorstep. Morning brought no answers, only questions. She was awake now, sitting stiffly on the edge of the bed, her long dark hair clinging to her damp skin. Her voice was soft when she spoke, but every word carried the weight of a history Ray had tried to forget. "I am Veyran," she said. Ray felt his stomach tighten. The Veyrans, the enemy species from the 100-Year War. Even now, decades after the ceasefire, most humans had never met one face-to-face. Those who had often carried scars, too. Prove it. Her presence here was not just unusual, it was dangerous. She must have seen the suspicion in his eyes because she quickly added, "I am not here to harm you." Ray didn't answer right away. He was thinking of the broadcasts, the propaganda from both sides. Veyrans had always called humans dirty heritage. It was more than an insult, it was a belief, a deep prejudice rooted in their history. They saw humans as flawed copies of some ancient shared ancestor, a mistake that should have been erased. Ray leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "So why is a proud Veyran standing in my house asking for help?" Her eyes flickered, as if the question had struck a wound. "My husband left me," she said. "He is a commander in the Veyran fleet." Ray raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like a reason to cross the border." She looked down, her voice almost a whisper. "He abandoned me because I refused to help destroy your people." The words hung in the air. Ray tried to read her face, but her alien features made it hard. The small changes in her skin tone, the faint shifting of the glowing lines along her neck. Still, there was something in her tone. Not pride, not arrogance, but something closer to shame. "You expect me to believe that?" Ray asked. She nodded slowly. "I was part of a council, a secret one. Humans and Veyrans together, working to build peace." Her silver eyes met his. "Your people have never been told of it, and neither have mine." Ray knew how dangerous such a claim could be. She was lying. She could be a spy, using the story to get close to him. If she was telling the truth, it meant both governments were hiding something far bigger than ordinary citizens could imagine. Before he could decide, a faint sound reached them, a high-pitched hum outside. Ray's instincts kicked in. He moved to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to peek. A dark shape hovered in the distance, its sleek, triangular frame glowing with faint blue light. A Veyran scout drone, its lenses swept over the ground in slow arcs, scanning for life signs. "They're looking for me," she said, her voice steady now. Ray turned to her. "And you brought them here?" She didn't flinch. "They will search the whole sector. They will burn it if they must." Her words carried no drama, only certainty. Ray cursed under his breath. He had kept his distance from the war for years, living quietly, repairing old ships for trade caravans now. Because of her, the war was at his doorstep again. "You should leave," he said sharply. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate. "If I leave, I die," she said. "If I stay, maybe you live." The way she said it sent a chill down his spine. He studied her for a moment longer. Her clothes were torn, her skin marked with faint burns. As if from energy weapons, she was telling the truth about being hunted that much. It was clear the question was why. Ray knew one thing. The longer they stood here, the greater the chance that drone would pick up their heat signatures. He grabbed a blanket and tossed it at her. "Cover yourself. Those lines on your skin will stand out in the scanner." She obeyed without hesitation, pulling the rough fabric tight when he looked outside again. The drone was moving closer. The hum was louder now, the blue glow sweeping across the trees. Ray's hand went to the old rifle leaning against the wall. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. "This is your last chance to tell me the truth," he said, his voice low. She took a deep breath. "My name is Lyra, her Silver." Eyes locked on his, "And I carry something they will kill for." Ray didn't know it yet. But the moment she spoke those words, his quiet life was gone forever. Ray had not invited her to stay, yet there she was, moving quietly around his small outpost home, as if the place belonged to her. Lyra kept her blanket pulled tight, hiding the glowing lines on her skin, but even covered, she seemed out of place. Her silver eyes followed every movement he made, studying him like she was measuring the space between them. Ray had lived alone for years, was used to silence, the kind that lets a man think about nothing at all. Now, there was always a faint sound, the soft steps of alien feet on old wooden floors, the low hum of her strange necklace when she thought he wasn't listening. That necklace bothered him more than anything else. It was small, shaped like a teardrop of dark glass, but when the lights were low, he could see tiny sparks moving inside it. Sometimes it pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sometimes it seemed to pulse in rhythm with his, and that made him uneasy. She refused his food at first, pushing the plate away with a polite but firm gesture. Dead, she sipped from a small pouch she carried. It was filled with some thick green liquid that smelled faintly metallic. Ray didn't press the matter. He had no desire to know what it was. It was the third night when he first heard her talking in her sleep. At first it was a whisper, soft and broken. Then the words came clearer, a mix of Veyran and human language. "Sector gate. Collapse. Before dawn." Ray sat in his chair, pretending to read, but his eyes kept flicking toward her. She lay on the couch, her face turned away, her hand clutching the strange necklace. In the morning, he asked her what the words meant. She simply said, "Dreams are not always truth," and went back to watching the horizon. It wasn't a denial, but it wasn't an answer either. By the fourth day, Ray started noticing other changes. The air outside his cabin felt wrong. Birds that usually nested in the trees were gone. The trade caravans that passed every few days had vanished. Something was pressing in on this part of the frontier, something unseen but close. That night, while repairing a loose panel on the roof, Ray spotted a faint blue light moving through the trees. It wasn't a drone this time. The movement was too deliberate, too careful. Bounty hunters, Veyran bounty hunters. He climbed down quietly, slipped inside, and checked his rifle. Lyra was sitting at the table, looking at a map. One of his maps. He froze. She didn't look up. "I was trying to see where they might search next," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You mean the bounty hunters outside?" Ray asked. Her eyes finally met his. "They are closer than you think," she said calmly. "And they won't leave without me." The sound of boots crunching on dead leaves reached them. Ray motioned for her to stay quiet. He moved to the window, peered out, and saw 3 figures in dark armor, their helmets reflecting the moonlight. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. One of them stepped forward, scanning the house with a device. Ray ducked low, his heart pounding. He knew the bounty hunters wouldn't knock. They would breach, kill him, take her, and burn the place down. He turned to Lyra, ready to tell her to run, but stopped when he saw her expression. Her eyes had gone cold, her posture straight, the necklace at her. The throat was glowing brighter. She whispered something in Veyran, a language he didn't know but felt in his bones. Outside, the lead bounty hunter suddenly froze. His weapon fell from his hand, his body trembling as if caught in some invisible grip. The other 2 shouted and aimed at him, but he turned and fired at them instead. It was over in seconds. 3 bodies lay still among the trees. Ray stared at her. "What did you just do?" he demanded. She looked away. "Something I promised never to do again." Her voice was soft, but there was a weight in it, a shadow of something darker than war. Ray knew then, she wasn't just a refugee or a runaway wife. She was dangerous. To her enemies and maybe to him too, but she had also just saved his life. He felt the uneasy truth settle in his chest. Whether he liked it or not, they were now bound together by survival. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke. Far off in the distance, blue lights flickered in the sky. Ray had seen that sight before. Years ago during the war, it meant more hunters would come. It meant the quiet. Life he had built here was over. Lyra seemed to read his thoughts. "We should leave before dawn," she said. Ray hesitated. Leaving meant abandoning everything he owned, everything familiar, but staying meant death. In the end, the choice wasn't really a choice at all. He went to pack. Lyra stood by the window, watching the tree line. The glowing lines on her skin faintly visible again. The necklace at her throat pulsed once, twice. Like the heartbeat of something waiting to wake, the sky was still black when Ray stepped outside. Cold air bitted his skin, and the horizon glowed faintly with the first signs of dawn. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He was leaving the only home he had known for years behind him. Lyra stood with a small pack slung over her shoulder, her glowing skin lines hidden under the rough blanket. Her silver eyes scanned the dark forest ahead, as if she could see threats beyond his sight. They moved quickly, following a narrow path between the trees. Ray knew these trails well, every bend and rise. But now they felt different. Every sound, the crack of a twig, the whisper of wind through branches, made him tense. Lyra walked in silence, her steps almost too quiet for someone who wasn't human. They had gone less than a mile when a sharp crack echoed through the air. Ray froze. That wasn't a branch, it was a rifle shot. A tree beside him splintered, sending shards of wood into the air. "Run," Lyra said. Her voice firm but calm. They darted forward. Ray leading them into a series of switchback trails meant to confuse pursuers. More shots rang out, some hitting the ground near their feet. Ray's heart pounded. He had expected bounty hunters to follow, but not this fast. They must have been tracking them all night ahead. The trees thinned, revealing a stretch of open ground leading to the edge of the wastelands. The wastelands were dangerous, abandoned after the war, filled with ruined outposts and poisoned dust, but they offered one advantage: no one could easily track you there. They sprinted across the open ground, the sound of boots and shouted orders chasing them from the forest. Ray didn't look back, but he could feel the hunters closing in. Lyra kept pace without slowing, her breathing steady despite the speed. Halfway across, a flash of blue light seared past Ray's shoulder. Energy shot. He threw himself to the side, pulling Lyra down with him. The blast hit the ground, leaving a smoking crater where they had just been. Ray aimed his rifle toward the tree line and fired twice. One shot hit a bounty hunter in the chest, sending him sprawling. The others scattered for cover, buying Ray and Lyra precious seconds. They reached the first broken structures of the wasteland, the remains of old human bunkers. Walls half buried in sand and ash. Ray ducked into one, pulling Lyra inside. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. "They'll follow," Ray said between breaths. Lyra nodded. Touching her necklace, it pulsed in the dust around them. Shifted, almost as if responding to her. "What are you doing?" Ray asked. "Hiding us," she replied simply. A faint shimmer spread through the air, and Ray realized she was bending light around the bunker, making it harder to see from the outside. For a moment, the world was silent except for their breathing. Then came the low hum, not from her necklace this time, but from above. Ray looked up through a hole in the ceiling. A Veyran patrol ship was gliding across the wasteland, its searchlights sweeping the ground like hungry eyes. "They've called in air support," Ray muttered. Lyra's expression hardened. "They won't stop," she said. "They can't let me reach the safe zone." Ray frowned. "Safe zone?" She hesitated, then answered, "A human Veyran facility hidden under the desert." The last place still working for peace before Ray could process her words. The patrol ship's light passed over their bunker. It paused, then locked on. "Move," Ray shouted, grabbing his rifle. They burst out of the bunker, sprinting deeper into the wasteland as the ship opened fire. Energy blasts tearing apart the ruins behind them. The ground was uneven, littered with debris from old battles shattered. Vehicles, rusted weapons, and bones half buried in the sand. Ray jumped over a broken beam, his boots crunching on glass. Lyra moved like water, weaving between obstacles with inhuman grace. But the ship's shadow followed, dark and relentless. A sudden cliff edge appeared ahead. Beyond it, a dry riverbed, cut deep into the earth. Ray didn't slow. He jumped, landing hard and rolling to absorb the impact. Lyra landed beside him, her blanket falling away to reveal the full glow of her skin lines. For a heartbeat, the light from her body was the brightest thing in the wasteland. The ship banked above them, preparing another strike. Lyra pressed her hands to the ground. And the sand trembled. A sudden wall of dust and debris erupted into the air, engulfing the patrol ship's searchlights. Ray used the cover to lead them into a narrow canyon branching off from the riverbed. They didn't stop until the hum of the ship faded into the distance. Ray leaned against the canyon wall. Trying to catch his breath, Lyra stood opposite him. The glow from her skin slowly fading. "You could have done that earlier," Ray said between gasps. She shook her head. "Every time I use it, they can track me more easily." Ray realized then that her powers were both their weapon and their curse. They could run, they could hide, but every move broke. The canyon walls rose high on either side, blocking most of the morning light. Ray walked ahead, checking every bend before they moved. His rifle ready behind him, Lyra followed without complaint, her footsteps light on the cracked stone. It had been hours since they escaped the patrol ship, but neither of them spoke much. The silence between them was heavy, not of distrust alone, but of unspoken questions. Finally, when they reached a narrow stretch where the canyon walls squeezed, "Close enough to touch both sides," Ray stopped. "This safe zone you mentioned," he said, turning to face her. "I need to know if it's real." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether he was ready for the truth. "It's real," she said softly, "and it's the only place left where humans and Veyrans work together without orders from their governments." Ray frowned. "Never heard of such a place." "That is the point," she replied. "It must remain hidden, even from most of our own people, or it will be destroyed." Her silver eyes glinted in the dim light, "and I was part of it until they betrayed me." Ray studied her face. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. "Betrayed you how?" he asked. Lyra's voice dropped lower. "My husband learned I was working for the council," he told the Veyran High Command, "and they ordered my capture." Her hand brushed against the dark glass necklace at her throat. "This holds data. They cannot allow the humans to see evidence of their plans to restart the war." Ray let out a slow breath. "So that's why they're hunting you." She nodded once. "And now, because you helped me, they will hunt you too." It wasn't news to Ray. He had already felt the shift in his gut, the old instinct from his soldier days, the knowledge that once you cross certain lines, there's no going back. Still, it was different hearing it from her lips. She was pulling him into something far bigger than himself. They moved on. By midday, the canyon widened into a broken plain where the ground was littered with rusted metal and shattered glass. In the distance, half buried in sand, stood the skeletal remains of an old human watchtower. Ray led them toward it, hoping for shelter inside. The air was stale. Ray found a corner clear enough to set their packs down. Lyra wandered to a wall, where faded markings were still visible, old human military codes. "You fought in the war, didn't you?" she asked without looking at him. Ray stiffened. "I was a soldier, yes, but that was a long time ago." "War stays in the blood," she said quietly. He didn't answer, but he knew she was right. That night the wind howled through the broken tower. They sat by a small, shielded fire, its light casting long shadows across the walls. Lyra studied him for a while, then asked, "Why did you open the door to me that night?" Ray shrugged. "Maybe I was curious." Her expression softened. "Or maybe you are not like the others who would have turned me in." He didn't like where this was going, so he changed the subject. "Tomorrow, we head east. The terrain will be rough, but it'll take us closer to this safe zone of yours." Lyra didn't argue. Instead, she pulled out a small metallic sphere from her pack. She pressed it, and a faint holographic map appeared, floating between them. Ray leaned closer. The map showed the wastelands, marked with glowing red dots, enemy patrol routes, and a single blue light deep in the eastern desert. "That's it," she said, "the safe zone," before Ray could ask how far. A sharp crack split the night. The fire flickered as dust rained from above. Ray grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Through the broken frame, he saw movement, shadows slipping between the wrecks outside. Not bounty hunters this time, but soldiers. Human soldiers, Lyra tensed. They must have tracked your ID tag. Ray cursed under his breath. He'd forgotten the small embedded chip every soldier was given, even after leaving the service. He could still be traced, the first soldier. Stepped into the open, aiming a rifle at the tower. Come out, Ray. Orders from command. Surrender the Veyran. He shouted. Lyra's hand went to her necklace, but Ray shook his head sharply. They'll kill you if you resist, he whispered. They'll kill us both if we don't, she replied. The decision hung in the air for only a heartbeat. Ray fired first, the shot cracking across the plain. Chaos erupted. Soldiers dove for cover. Bullets and energy bolts tore through the night. Lyra dropped to the floor, her hands pressed to the ground. The earth trembled under them from the sand. Outside, jagged shards of rock shot upward, forming a barrier around the tower. Ray used the cover to pick off 2 soldiers, but more were coming. Time to leave, Lyra said. Her voice steady. Despite the chaos, Ray grabbed their packs. And together, they slipped through a gap in the far wall, disappearing into the dark. Plain beyond, by the time the soldiers broke through the barrier, they were gone. The alliance between the human soldier and the alien fugitive had begun. And in the distance, the blue light of the safe zone pulsed faintly, calling them forward. The safe zone wasn't what Ray expected, after days of running, fighting, and hiding. He had imagined a hidden fortress, a place armed to the teeth with weapons and guarded by rows of soldiers. Instead, the entrance was buried beneath the shifting desert sands, a narrow steel hatch barely visible in the moonlight. Lyra knelt and placed her hand on a small panel beside it. Her skin lines glowed faintly, matching the faint hum from the hatch. A series of locks clicked open, and the door swung inward, revealing a tunnel lit by soft white light. Ray hesitated. Before stepping inside, it didn't feel like a military base. The air was warmer, carrying the scent of food and something almost like fresh rain. The tunnel led into a wide chamber, its walls lined with smooth metal and old banners. Some human, some Veyran. People moved quietly between stations, their uniforms a strange blend of both cultures. Some glanced at Ray with suspicion. Are they? Others at Lyra with open relief. A tall, gray-haired human approached, his steps slow but steady. Lyra, he said, his voice deep and calm. We thought you were lost. Lyra smiled faintly. Not yet, she replied, glancing toward Ray. I had help. The man's eyes studied Ray for a long moment before nodding. Then you are welcome here, though I fear you've brought the storm with you. They were given a small room on the lower level. 2 beds stood side by side, separated by a narrow space. Ray dropped his pack on one. Lyra sat on the other. For the first time in days, the walls didn't shake with gunfire, and the air didn't carry the smell of smoke. It felt almost safe, but Ray knew better. The commander would come, be tomorrow, maybe in a week, but he wouldn't stop. He had seen that kind of obsession before in war, and now it was tied directly to the woman sitting across from him. Later they ate with the others in a quiet mess hall. Conversations were low, most people avoiding Ray's gaze. A few whispered about the human soldier and the Veyran traitor. Ray ignored them, but he noticed Lyra's shoulders tense each time she heard the words. Back in their room, she sat on her bed, staring at the necklace in her hand. Ray leaned against the wall, watching her. You could destroy that. Said it's not that simple, she replied. Inside is proof that could end the war before it starts again, or start it sooner if it falls into the wrong hands. Ray crossed the room and sat beside her. You trust these people to keep it safe? She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. I trust you, she said simply. Ray wasn't sure what to say to that. Trust was a rare thing out here, rarer still between species who had spent a century killing each other. The night was cold, colder than the desert outside. The heating system in their room was weak. The thin blankets doing little to keep the chill away. Ray lay awake for a while, listening to the faint hum of the bass. He heard Lyra shifting on her bed, the sound of her breathing uneven. Finally, her voice came softly in the dark. You're still awake, so are you, he replied. Silence stretched between them before she spoke again. There's room here, she said quietly, her hand patting the edge of her bed. Ray hesitated. It wasn't about fear. They had saved each other's lives more than once. It was about trust. But in the end, the cold and the weight of the last few days pushed him to move. He crossed the short space and lay down beside her. The bed was narrow, forcing them close for a moment.
House.
Neither spoke. Then she whispered, "Maybe humans aren't so dirty after all." Ray chuckled softly. "And maybe Veyrans aren't all bad," she smiled, just barely. The warmth of her body was surprising. And the steady rhythm of her breathing began to pull him toward sleep. Outside their small room, the base continued its quiet work. But somewhere beyond the desert, a Veyran commander was already planning his next move. The storm was not over. Yet for now, in this small room, deep underground, the war felt far away. Ray knew it wouldn't last. But he also knew something had changed. They were no longer just allies bound by survival. They were partners in a fight neither of them had chosen, but both were now determined to win. And if that meant sharing a bed until the war was over, so be it.